Okay guys, so in order to understand the separation technique called fractional crystallization, unfortunately there's some vocabulary you just need. Now the good news is there's no quiz on this tutorial, at least not right now. Eventually I will want you to know these words for a test or a quiz, but you don't need to memorize them immediately. You can refer to them until you start to get used to them. Here are the words you gotta know. A fraction is a part of a mixture. Filtration is a separation technique that uses the fact that one or more fractions of your mixture can dissolve while others can't. We use this to separate our copper from our salt because our copper fraction does not dissolve, but our salt fraction does. Fractional crystallization, which is what this tutorial is about, is a separation technique that uses the fact that one or more fractions of a mixture can dissolve at higher temperatures better than others will. And we're going to do that with two substances. We're going to use salt again, and we're going to use something called potassium nitrate because it dissolves really well at high temperatures. Then there's some terms that just help us discuss the different parts of a mixture that is part liquid, part solid. So there's something called the solute, which is any particles that are dissolved in a liquid. Solvent are the particles that are doing the dissolving. So if we're mixing salt with water, for example, the salt is the solute, the water is the solvent because it's doing the dissolving. And the two things together would be the solution. So solution refers to the two things, your solute and your solvent mixed together. Solute and solvent mixed together form your solution. And that's a homogeneous mixture, right? Because a solute dissolves in a solvent, meaning it's totally evenly mixed. Now, these other two words have to do with filtering. When you filter something through a funnel, you always have something that's left behind in your filter paper, sort of sitting in here, and then you have something that goes through and is a liquid. Your filtrate is the solution that goes through as a liquid, and your filtride is the stuff that is left in your filter paper. Now again, you don't need to memorize these terms, but I am going to be using them throughout the tutorial, and I will remind you what each word means as we go. In order to understand how we're going to separate our salt and our potassium nitrate from each other, you need to understand how they behave differently at different temperatures. So what I have is some sodium chloride in 10 milliliters of water here, and the same amount of potassium nitrate in 10 milliliters of water over here, and I stirred them up really well and let them sit, and that water's at room temperature. It's about 20 degrees Celsius. And you can see that they don't really have much difference in how well they dissolve. They both don't dissolve very well. Then I heated them up to about 80 degrees Celsius using my little hot plate. You can see my much beaten up hot plate there. I heated them up, and you can see that the guy on the right, the potassium nitrate, totally dissolved, but the sodium chloride stayed put. This is what we want to take advantage of to separate these two things. Because if you can imagine, if I had these two things together in one test tube and I heat them up to 80 degrees, the salt's going to stay behind and the potassium nitrate is going to dissolve, which is going to make it possible for me to filter them and get one away from the other. So that's the basic idea here. Okay, so step one, you have to get 8 grams of salt, which is the fine crystalled stuff, and 5 grams of potassium nitrate, which is these little circles. So you're going to need 4 trays. 2 of them will have stuff in them already. You'll get those from me. They'll be up at the front of the room. And you're going to get 2 empty trays because you're going to want to weigh your stuff out. I'm not going to already have it weighed out for you. So you need to get an electronic balance. And what you'll do is you put your empty tray on your electronic balance, hit the tare button so that it removes the weight of that tray for you. And then you can use a scoopula to spoon stuff from, say, here to here until you get 5 grams worth, and then you'll have your 5 grams in your new container. And you can do the same thing with your salt. Once you have the two things measured out, you're going to transfer them to a small test tube. Be smart about this. Use a funnel. Here's my small test tube. Here's me taking my, looks like my potassium nitrate, and I'm pouring it through the funnel into my small test tube. And I'm going to do the same thing with my sodium chloride so that I'm going to get a nice amount of the two solids mixed together in there. And I don't have to do anything else. I can just pour them in there. Now that I have them in there together, I can move on to separating them. Okay, so what you want to do is you want to get yourself a small piece of filter paper, because these giant coffee filter papers are going to get in our way trying to do this very delicate procedure. So all you need to do is cut the bottom round part out. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. And then if you do that, you can use that much smaller piece to make a filter that fits your funnel a lot better. And that's going to be important because having a lot of extra paper can cause a problem with this experiment. And in case you forgot, here's how you fold up that little piece of filter paper, right? You fold it in half right here. This is step 1. Fold it in half again. That's step 2. Step 3, hold it so it's facing you so you can see that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 petals. Pull 1, 2, 3 petals together on one side, leaving one over here. And then you can fit it right into your filter paper, into your funnel right there. And that's the process. Okay, now, you got to get a lot of stuff to happen at once. So here's my recommendation. When you go to start this lab, put your goggles on, tie your hair back, stand up, gather all the materials you think you need, and right away start heating 100 milliliters of water. You're going to need 100 milliliters of water in a small beaker right here. And when that water is boiling, you're going to need to transfer 10 milliliters of it from here to here. But that's tricky because what we want to do is measure it. So you're going to use a pipette to get it out of your boiling water, which is also tricky. So you're going to take a pipette, see your pipette in here? And you're going to pipette in, it's probably take you three different times to get 10 milliliters of water because the pipettes don't hold a full 10 milliliters. So you're going to pipette 3 different times into here until you get up to the 10 milliliter mark. Then you can pour this stuff, the liquid that's in your graduated cylinder, into your mixture. As soon as you do that, you're going to want to take this stirring rod out and replace that with one of those black stoppers. And you're going to shake for 1 minute to try and get as much of your substance dissolved as possible. This is a lot of transferring of your liquid, which is why we want it to be boiling. But again, you got to be careful here. It's going to be hot, right? So the way that you're careful is you use the pipette to transfer it to your graduated cylinder from here to here. And then when you pour it out of here, you're going to hold it at the top so that you don't burn yourself as you pour it into here. But you want to act quickly because that water is going to lose heat very fast, and you have to shake for a full minute. And you don't want the temperature to get any lower in this container than 70 degrees Celsius because that's the temperature we're going to filter at. So all of this has to happen quickly. So you got to make sure you got all your stuff near each other and that you're ready to go. Plus, just to add an extra level of difficulty to this, you need to preheat your filter paper with the funnel with the filter paper in it. Because if you try to filter this stuff into a cold piece of filter paper or room temperature piece of filter paper, it'll mess everything up because as soon as the water hits that piece of filter paper, it's going to immediately cool right off. So, watch this. Here's what you need to do. Using one of my washcloths, blow out the flame that's under your alcohol burner because you do not want a flame coming in contact with your washcloth. Pick up this boiling water through the washcloth and then pour it through your funnel that has your filter paper in it. That wets and heats up the filter paper. You want to do this, you can do it right over the sink. I just wasn't near the sink. I couldn't get near the sink when I was doing this. Or you can do it into an extra container that you happen to have. I was using a large test tube here. You don't need that water. It's the whole purpose of this water is to warm up your funnel and filter paper so that it's at the right temperature. So you're going to do this seconds before you pour your mixture through. So watch. Okay, here's the deal. You need to pour your hot water through your filter paper, and seconds later, uncap your mixture. This is your solid that's been dissolved in your 10 milliliters of hot water. You've been shaking it for a minute. Take that cap off, and as soon as you pour this hot water through, pull this through, and you need to have a new test tube here to catch your filtrate. Filtrate, remember, is the liquid that has the dissolved stuff. When you do that, in the filter paper, you're going to catch most of your salt, and in here, most of your potassium nitrate is going to be in your water. But it's all about being fast enough. You got to make sure that when you're pouring this, it's at around 70 degrees Celsius. And it will be as long as you work quickly, because you poured it in there, it was 100 degrees Celsius, it was boiling. You took a minute, you shook it, right? Trying not to burn yourself, because remember there's hot water in there. You just preheated this filter paper with boiling water, and now you're going to pour this stuff through that funnel, lickety-split. As soon as you do that, you're going to separate most of your mixture. Then, the next step is to take what's in here, the liquid that's in here, and let it cool. As it cools, it's going to precipitate out your potassium nitrate. This is what mine looked like seconds after I put it into a cold water beaker. So this is water from the tap. I put the stuff that I just filtered, the liquid that I just filtered away in here, and you can start to see already some cool looking needle-like crystals of potassium nitrate are forming down there. A few seconds later, there was way more. Look at that. Woo! Hate when that happens. That's what it looks like a few seconds later. That's because that potassium nitrate that was dissolved can't stay dissolved after it cools off. So now if we filter again with fresh piece of filter paper, again, got to cut out around, right? Make it just so. If we filter again, now we'll have potassium nitrate in a second piece of filter paper. Pretty cool stuff. Finally, so now what I have is two different pieces of filter paper. I've laid them out flat. They're all wet, but I laid them out flat on the desktop to let them dry. And I took a magnifying glass to look at the crystals of each one. And you can kind of see the potassium nitrate crystals are like little feathers. Can you see that? But the sodium chloride crystals, the regular table salt, are like little cubes, just like you think of a salt cube as being. That's one way to tell that we did a successful separation, because you can see the difference in the crystals if we look closely enough. You can see my magnifying glass here, which you'll be able to borrow. But another cool thing to do is a flame test. So potassium nitrate gives off a nice purple color in a flame, and sodium chloride gives off a nice orange color in a flame. So when everybody's ready for this test, I'll turn the lights out, and what we'll do, instead of using a splint, this particular version of it works with a glass stirring rod. So I'll show you what you're going to do. Okay, so check it out. I just used a glass stirring rod, and what I did was I added a little bit of each of my separated crystals back to a little bit of water in a small test tube. And then I stuck the glass stirring rod in there, swirled it around, and put the wet stirring rod into the flame. This is my salt. Sodium chloride gives off a nice orange color. And this is my potassium nitrate. You can see it's very purpley. And that's how you know for sure that you've done a good job separating the two things. It's a pretty tricky process, but it's not that hard. You just have to get used to it, have to practice it. So probably practice it together on Thursday. And then on Friday, I'll let you guys do it for real for yourselves so that you can have the experience of successfully doing it completely on your own. Okay, that's it. I'll see you guys in class.